and we're going to start another one. Okay, so what I was saying earlier is that right now, patterns of association are induced by this model, despite the fact there's no causal connection from smoking status to heart disease status. Right? There's no link. The person's chance of developing heart disease is completely independent in the model of smoking status. But if we look at the prevalence of heart disease among current and former smokers, among so-called ever smokers, it's markedly larger than it is among never smokers. Here it is around never smokers, which is somewhere between, it looks like, somewhere around 0.1 to the high side, maybe 0.2, somewhere up there. This one goes a little bit above that. But here we go. Look at this among current. So this is never here. Okay, come on. Never, current, and former. Current, former. Right? So we have this induced disparity, but as Sarah said, that's induced by the fact that people are older, tend to have had more of a chance to develop heart disease, and therefore a larger fraction have it, despite the higher mortality that afflicts them. And then they're also more likely to be an ever smoker. But in this case, we have good biologic, physiologic, and pathophysiological understanding together. I'm not saying those are independent, of the pathways by which smoking causes heart disease, despite the attempts of tobacco companies over decades to cover that up or to deny it or to obscure it or to spread disinformation about it. But given that we have confidence in this, we're going to put in place some impact of smoking status of risk of the change in smoking status. We can't just say like make more current smokers have heart disease. No. It's how does it change over time? How do the pathways get affected by their smoking status? The pathways involving heart disease. How does the presence as a current smoker, for example, affect their chance of developing heart disease? The fraction that have heart disease is an emergent property of the model, said it's endogenous to the model. We can't make the fraction with heart disease higher among current smokers. This is not the way the models work. The models give rise to generate heart disease. The fraction of the population that has heart disease, or the relative fraction among those by smoking status, etc., or by age. What we can do is have occurrence of smoking affect certain causal pathways here, the risk of developing heart disease. So let's do that. Let's do that if we may. Okay. So here, what we're going to do is a rather simple view, but I think it's actually has some insights associated with it. We're going to have someone's current smoking status impact the risk per year of developing heart disease. One step at a time. I know some of you might say, well, wait, it's really the cumulative years they've smoked that induces an extra chance. That may be true, and we could actually rather elegantly capture that in a way that would be quite prohibitive in an aggregate model. But one step at a time, and right now we're going to focus on their current smoking status. if they're currently smoking, it impacts their risk of developing heart disease on a per year basis. It's quite well explored as an area of understanding. Okay, so how are we going to have this rate depend on what state that they're in? How are we going to have this, the chance of developing this, somehow be impacted by this? Well, I'll tell you. In the past, and within as recently as the past hour or so, we've had other aspects of their situation depend on their smoking status. What thing in the model that was there as we ran it that last time depends on their smoking status? It's a rather simple thing. It's an innocuous thing. It's a rather epiphenomenal thing. It just displays something about the model. But what is it that depends on the smoking status right now at an individual level that is changing based on their smoking status? It's their what? Their color. Their color. So we're going to use the same pattern. Color indeed. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the lack of hegemonistic interest. Okay. So we're going to put in place a variable. And this is going to be called heart disease hazard rate. Chance per year developing heart disease. We could say annual hazard rate if we want to be clear, but because the time unit of the model is years, generally understood that by default. So heart disease hazard rate. It's going to be a double. It's not going to be an int. It's not going to be a color. It's not going to be a Boolean. It's going to be a double. It's going to be some value. And by default, it's going to be whatever value is here right now, 0.02 per year. This is our current one. You just have it hard-coded. So we're going to have that be 0.02 per year. It's simple. But that's it if we don't assign to it. And now we're going to be able to change it. How do we change this thing? Where do we change this thing in the model? If we want its value to change, depending on their smoking status, from never, current, former. We want the risks from a current smoker on a per year basis of developing heart disease to be higher than for never. Where are we going to put changes to this variable? We're going to put them in the...
I might be wrong, but is it the causal pathway? No.
Well, okay, we do need something here. It's a very insightful point. We do need something in the causal pathway. This is going to, instead of being 0.02, what's it going to be now? Guess what? It's just going to be,
Yeah, it's what we just created, I guess.
You just created heart disease hazard rate. So we're going to just put that variable in. But now that's going to be changing variable. And where is it going to change? Where is the value used that are set for this going to be set? Or will it be used? Or where will it be imposed? Where will different values be set? Well, where were the different values of smoking status color set? Where was that set? Where was this one modified? Where was it changed to reflect their smoking status? It was changed at 3 places.
A smoking assay chart.
Sorry?
A smoking assay chart.
Yeah, in the smoking state chart. So for each of these, exactly. For each of these states. So just as this was changed, we're going to assign a different value to it. And morally, I would like this to be given by parameter in main, but I hope you'll forgive me given the late hour that I lapse. And I stand guilty. Okay. Heart disease hazard rate for a never smoker will be really, really low, 0.005. Mind you, the default value of this is 0.02. So this is like 1/4 of that value. Do we need a semicolon? Do we need a semicolon?
Yes.
Yes, because we're assigning to, we're saying like, do this, overwrite this, darn it, like set it. Now we're not asking for it to compute a value. It's not like here we're just saying use this value, or here use this value. We don't need a semicolon there because we're using the value. But here we're saying set this thing. Okay. We can copy and adjust it. I do so wary of the peril of being too glib about that. We have to be cautious when copying and pasting. This one for current smokers will be really high, 0.04. Gosh, 8 times as high as it is for never smokers on a per year basis. Their chance per year of developing heart disease, if they're currently a smoker, will be 8 times higher than the per year chance of a never smoker developing heart disease. That's what we're pausing.
Put that in the exit action.
Oh, I put in the exit. Thank you. Thank you, Wade. Thank you. What a rookie mistake. Yes. Okay. This one is in the correct place. Okay. Clock's right twice a day. Okay. Here we'll put it in 0.01. It'll be somewhere in between. We'll posit that for a former smoker, they have some accumulated damage that puts them at risk. We won't simulate right now. We won't, at the moment, characterize how that changes based on their time since smoking. There is some evidence that it may decrease since smoking, but it's not believed to decrease to the point where, if someone smoked for a serious amount of time and they start to be a former smoker, it lowers the risk on a per year basis from being a current smoker, for sure. But it doesn't lead to it ever totally disappearing compared to what it would, in other words, resetting to the value for never smoker. So it's appropriate that it be somewhere in between. Are people comfortable with what I just did?
So I have a quick question.
Yeah, please.
Could we change the value of heart disease hazard rate in the transition between never smoker, current smoker, and former smoker?
Yes, we could. And that's not a...
Do they have a similar or same functionalities, like they do the same things?
Yeah, there are times... so yes, you can in general hoist something out of here into the things into it. But I want to highlight that this would lead to some duplicated effects here, right? Because like this 0.04, if we put it in the transitions, it would need, that 0.04 would need to go here as well as here. And maybe later I'd forget to, I went to modify it and I updated it one place and not the other. In which case it's kind of more vulnerable to being overlooked where it is. Conceptually, it's a single value, and I like to put it in a centralized place. It's at once and not duplicated many places in a way that I might overlook later. Someone also might not, if you put it here, they might not know if there's a lot of thinking that went behind, well, coming from never smoker we're actually drawing that from a different empirical data source than if they're coming from farmer smoker into guards. Like, no. It like conceptually, it's the single value. It's like a single reference value. We want to know we're making the same, a single assumption here about current smokers. So putting it here is sometimes desirable. Now, there are times where, as Wade could tell you, where we will put things in transitions because there are certain things about transitioning from X to Y that you want to take into account when you enter Y. There are times where you use it artfully. But I think we'll choose depending on the case is particularly strong for putting in a transition. If there's something about that transition from X to Y that you want to take into account that's different from just the properties of Y itself, the destination state. Here, it's almost like this is a property of the destination state. So rather than a property of the way you got into the destination state. That's how I like to think about it. I hope those comments
Okay,
are...
thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, count of quit attempts would be a great example of something you put in a transition, like you want to increment that. And we'll be seeing that. Keeping track the number of times someone has quit or someone has relapsed. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's build. So now we have this change. Now I'm actually using a rather specific case, as Wade or some of the other TAs might be able to tell you. Certainly Wade could, because Wade can tell me some things about any logic. But here, the fact that this is changing only in these states means that it will be automatically reimposed here. The fact is that if you're changing this outside the context of a state chart, like if you're changing it based on something else that's going on, not transition among a state chart, but something else that's happening independently where there's no event firing to transition it, this may not notice that this changed. And so in this case, it's a safe thing. But there are cases where we will need to sort of recalculate this. For example, if their age, if we want to have this depend on their age explicitly, we want to posit that beyond any cumulative risk issues and so on, if we want to posit beyond any of the fact that older people are more likely to be smokers, if we believe there's, honest to goodness, a impact causally of age on the risk of developing heart disease conditional and having not developed it yet, if we believe that's honestly the case, there's some good reasons to believe that, and we want it to depend on their age, we need to actually tell it like, hey, recalculate annually, or hey, recalculate every month, or hey, recalculate daily, or something like that. This is a relationship between state charts. This is the value here is depending on the values of the state charts here. I'm not sure what you mean by other factors in the model. I mean, for example, their age induces a higher chance they will have made it here. Right now, we're not imposing an effective age on addition to this. I could do so, but in general, I prefer to teach one step at a time, and not try to fold all these things into a single occurrence of teaching. So here we will build, and we will run this. Okay, so question of how putting in place this impact of smoking is going to impact the rates, for example, of heart disease among smoking status. There was already quite a pronounced gap between rates of heart disease among never smokers as compared to current. Now that gap is far larger yet. You can see it's several times, about 0.1 to about 0.4. Here, former smokers, the fraction of heart disease is largely the same, even though among former smokers, the per year risk of developing heart disease for contingent on being in a former smoker state, it's actually quite a lot lower than current smokers. Why is there the fraction of them with heart disease so similar? Why is it so similar to each other?
Is it because the ones that go back to current probably already also had disease? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're going back and forth so quickly that for all intents and purposes, someone who was here for a certain amount of time, like right now, they will have been here a very short time before. And someone who's here will have been here. And so, really it's these two kind of combined that impact, because they're going back and forth so quickly. It's like, for all intents and purposes, they're well mixed. And yes, it's true. While they're in the current smoker state, they impose some risk, but this risk that they impose will hold for, it will be a risk that they develop heart disease over time, and before they develop it, often they'll become a former smoker, and then they'll relapse into current smoker. So they're going back and forth, and it's very hard to. In general, you're not going to find a marked association between what fraction of them have heart disease and their current status now, because their current status now is a very short-term phenomenon. What's really relevant is the prevalence of heart disease among ever smokers. That's the more longer-term thing here. These two are really going back and forth very quickly. It's a very short-term effect. And so those two are really very overlapped. Among never smokers, the rates are very low indeed. But remember, they were lower anyway among this, but now it's lower yet, because not only do we have the fact that never smokers, a lot of never smokers are young and haven't started and therefore haven't gotten much chance in their life to have developed heart disease so far. But also never smokers are at lower risk per year of developing heart disease. So the fraction is very small of heart disease, the fraction that of heart disease. And let's take a look at 50, those less than 50 and more. Again, a marked change. Less than 50, maybe it's around 0.27 to 6, something like that. Among those 50 and up, gosh, it's like 198, 199. My goodness. Right? So it's like upwards, 8 to 9 times or something. No, that can't be. Yeah, 0.26, 0.27 versus excuse me, I was misreading. I was reading the time. No, that didn't make sense. 0.6. So like 3 times. No, 3 to 4 times higher. So here we have relationships, causal relationships, not merely association, causal relationships that are imposed between these two state charts, and those induce associations that are quite striking. They also impact, the population distribution. The fact that older people are more likely to smoke is going to, have an impact. And if we look at the population statistics that we put into place a short time ago, see the prevalence of never smokers is quite low. Prevalence of former, current and former is reasonably higher. And we are going to see very likely among those who are older, we're going to see a larger fraction who are current smokers or who are ever smokers than among younger. So you could see that this is getting to be a rather textured system. And having the option of turning on or off effects, on or off, or for example, our dependence on how much the risk of developing heart disease is posited to depend on current smoking status, can really make a big difference. Really make a big difference. And again, it's to be borne in mind that even though there's no link in the model by which, for example, age impacts the risk of developing heart disease on a per year basis, age is strongly associated with it. And rushing off to incorporate a putative causal effect is something that you have to weigh very carefully because of Occam's razor. Simpler models in general give more insight, and you want to weigh the tendency to have a more complicated model with the challenges that can raise for learning, understanding, the time it takes to build it, etc. So here we have a causal relationship induced here between these two state charts. Now, I would like to correct a sort of oversimplification of this model in terms of well-known empirical patterns and demonstrate a feature. But before that, I think I want to emphasize the use of models for interventions. That's not something we've explored with the models built by our own hands yet. So I'm going